Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking into a case that's, well, it's deeply unsettling and just incredibly tragic.
Yeah, it really is. We're talking about the disappearance and death of 13-year-old Dylan Redwine.
We've drawn from a very detailed account that really lays out the timeline, the whole police investigation, all the twists, and ultimately the really shocking truth that came out.
And our goal here is to kind of unpack this whole tragedy for you, pulling out the key facts, the insights, so you can really grasp how this awful case unfolded.
It's a story with a motive that honestly is hard to comprehend, and it took years to uncover
Years
it.
of searching, yeah.
So let's start with Dylan himself. Dylan Redwine, born February 6, 1999 in Denver. Youngest son of Mark Redwine and Elaine Hall.
Right. And an older brother, Corey, 7 years older. The source material really emphasizes how close they were.
Yeah, it says Dylan really looked up to Corey, like idolized him.
The family lived in Bayfield, Colorado initially, but things changed around 2002, 2003.
The parents divorced, and the reasons mentioned are pretty serious. Mark's heavy drinking, apparently some near physical altercations with the kids.
Yeah, not good. So Elaine moved away to Colorado Springs with her new husband, Michael Hall.
Okay.
Corey stayed in Bayfield for a bit for school reasons, but then joined them. Dylan, though, lived mostly with his mom, Elaine.
And Mark.
Mark stayed in Bayfield, became a long-haul truck driver, so, his schedule was really unpredictable.
Right, and custody. Elaine got full custody, but the court said Dylan had to visit Mark on holidays, special occasions, that sort of thing.
Yeah, the material mentions Elaine wasn't trying to block visits, but Mark's job just made it difficult sometimes.
And Dylan himself, what was he like?
Described as humorous, fun-loving, very close to his mom, and hugely respected on the trick. Corey called him his best friend.
Did he get along with Mark?
When he was younger, yeah, they did things like fishing, baseball, but the source notes a big change after he turned 10. He became really withdrawn towards Mark.
Okay, that's important. Age 10. And he loved tech, right? His iPad.
Oh yeah, always chatting online with friends, especially his Bayfield friends. And here's a key detail for later. He was super quick responding to messages, like within seconds.
Wow, okay. And his stepdad, Michael Hall.
Very supportive. Described as a real father figure to both Dylan and Corey.
So that shift around age 10, that connects to something else, doesn't it? Something that happened in 2011.
It does, absolutely. This is a really critical context for understanding the motive.
Yeah.
There was this trip in 2011, Dylan, Corey, and Mark together.
And this is where Dylan found something on Mark's laptop.
Yeah. While Mark was asleep, Dylan used the laptop and stumbled onto some, horrific photos and documents.
The description is quite graphic.
It is. It showed Mark dressed in women's clothes, wearing a diaper, a wig, and photos depicting him eating feces from a diaper.
Oh my God. Just unimaginable for a kid to find.
Exactly. Dylan was, understandably, completely shocked, really upset. He showed Corey immediately.
And Corey took pictures of them.
Yes, with his own phone.
So this discovery must have completely changed how Dylan felt about his dad.
Profoundly. The material says he became really, really reluctant to visit Mark after that. He told his mom how uncomfortable he was.
Did Elaine try to stop the visits?
She actually talked to a lawyer about it, but was told she couldn't violate the court order. So Dylan still had to go, despite how he felt.
Which brings us to Sunday, November 18th, 2012, right before Thanksgiving.
Dylan, now 13, flies alone from Colorado Springs to Durango for one of these court-ordered visits with Mark. Corey couldn't make this one.
Mark picks him up. What did they do that day?
Pretty normal stuff, actually. Went to Walmart for supplies, got McDonald's.
Okay, but then Dylan asked something.
Yeah. That evening, he asked Mark if he could stay the night at his friend Ryan's house in Bayfield.
And Mark said no.
Refused. Said they should spend time together. Dylan just got there. But he promised he'd drop Dylan off at Ryan's at 6 a.m. the next morning because he had appointments.
So Dylan stayed at Mark's. What did they do that night?
Played catch with one of those soft, Nerf-type balls. Watched a movie they'd bought.
And bedtime.
Mark went to bed sometime between 9:30 Ziri and 10:30 p.m. Dylan stayed up.
Was he online?
Yes. The last known contact anyone had with Dylan was him chatting online with a friend, Michaela, about holiday plans. That chat ended around 10:30 p.m.
10:30 p.m., last contact. Okay, so the next morning, November 19th.
Mark claims he woke up early, like 5:00 a.m., for these legal appointments he had.
Did he try to wake Dylan for Ryan's house like he promised?
He said he tried twice, once around 5 a.m., again around 7:30 a.m. Said Dylan was tired, didn't wake up easily.
So Mark just left.
Left the house around 7:30 a.m. for his appointments, supposedly leaving Dylan asleep inside.
When did he get back?
around 11:00 a.m., and Dylan wasn't there.
What did he see? Any signs of Dylan?
He said he saw a dirty bowl in the sink. The TV was on a channel Dylan liked. So it suggested Dylan had been up after Mark left.
What did Mark do then? Did he panic? Call the police.
His initial claimed reaction was, well, he said he tested Dylan around 8 a.m., asking if he was awake. Then after getting home, around 11 a.m., sent another text asking where he was, if he was at Ryan's. Claimed he made 7 unanswered calls to Dylan's phone.
7 calls. But he didn't go check Ryan's house right away.
Not until about 2:30 p.m. He finally went over there, and Ryan confirmed Dylan never showed up.
Okay. So then he starts calling other friends.
Yeah, called other friends in the area. None had heard from Dylan. They all confirmed that last contact was the online chat the night before, around 10:30.
It's getting late in the day by now.
Right. Around 4:00 p.m., Mark finally calls Elaine, Dylan's mom.
And Elaine must have been worried sick.
Immediately concerned, especially because she'd actually called Mark earlier that morning.
Oh.
Yeah, and Mark had told her Dylan was fine, even though, by his own account, he hadn't properly checked on him since 7:30 a.m.
Wow. Okay, that's, yeah.
So Elaine tells Mark she hasn't heard from Dylan either, and basically says, report him missing now. He finally reported Dylan missing to the police around 6:00 p.m. that evening.
And Elaine, Michael, and Corey.
They drove straight from Colorado Springs through the night, got to Bayfield around 2 a.m. on November 20th, just desperate to start searching.
So the police investigation starts on the 19th, right after the report.
Police go to Mark's house. They bring a canine unit. The dog's name was Stella.
Standard procedure, get something with the missing person's scent.
Right. They ask Mark for something of Dylan's. Mark claims Dylan didn't bring much, just arrived. He tells them Dylan slept on the living room sofa.
Okay.
And this is where the first major red flag pops up. Stella, the canine, searches the sofa, the blankets, pillows, everything where Mark said Dylan slept.
Yes.
Found no scent of Dylan. None at all.
Wait, really? If he slept there all night?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Investigators found that highly, highly unusual. It immediately made them think, okay, either Dylan wasn't actually here or something was done to remove any trace of him. Big alarm bells.
Yeah, that doesn't sound right at all.
Yeah.
And then Elaine and the family arrive.
Around 2 a.m. on the 20th. They get to Mark's house, and the first thing they notice is a lot of empty liquor bottles.
Oh.
They describe Mark as red-faced, emotional, but they couldn't tell if it was from crying or drinking. And he seemed reluctant to start searching right then, suggesting they wait till morning.
That seems odd, given his son is missing.
Very odd. And as the official searches got going, Mark's behavior just kept raising eyebrows.
How so?
The source describes him as pretty inactive, just like sitting at a police tent drinking coffee, not really asking for updates.
Not participating much.
Not really. And when police asked him for theories, he suggested things like Dylan maybe ran away into the woods, or, get this, maybe had a fishing accident at a lake 9 miles away.
Have a fishing accident.
Yeah, he even mentioned a fishing pole was missing from his garage.
But wait, didn't Corey say Dylan wasn't really into fishing like that?
Exactly. Corey shut that down immediately, told police Dylan was all about tech, wouldn't go fishing alone, couldn't even tie a hook. If he wanted to fish, Ryan would be with him.
Did they search the lake anyway?
They did. Full search, underwater dives, everything. Found absolutely nothing.
So Mark's behavior is looking worse and worse. The canine result, the detachment, these weird theories.
Yeah, police suspicion was definitely growing. The lack of scent, his attitude, his stories. They started looking much closer at Mark. Maybe initially thinking kidnapping, custody dispute related, but the picture was getting darker.
And his statements kept contradicting things, right? Like telling Elaine Dylan was fine.
Exactly. Telling Elaine he was fine when he hadn't seen it. Claiming he made all those calls but then showed no real urgency after reporting him missing. And suggesting things like a bear attack.
Which experts dismissed.
Right away. Bears leave obvious traces. They don't just carry someone off deep into the woods. These theories felt like deflection.
Okay, so behavioral red flags, inconsistent statements, but then came the forensic evidence inside the house.
Yes, the luminol test. Police wanted to check the living room for blood.
And Mark had an explanation ready.
Before they even started, Mark volunteers that, Dylan recently cut his hand with a knife. Maybe that's why there might be blood.
Convenient. What did luminol show?
It showed significant blood spatter. On the sofa, the wall, the floor, despite obvious attempts to clean it up.
And not just a little cut, right? The
Yeah.
pattern.
No, the spatter pattern was inconsistent with a simple cut. It strongly suggested blunt force trauma, some kind of impact, a violent event.
So Mark's cut hand story didn't hold up. What did he say then?
his story started changing. First, he tried to say it was from an accident the year before. Police checked. The house had been renovated, new furniture put in after that supposed accident. So, impossible.
Okay, busted. Next explanation.
And then he suggested maybe it was from that game they played with a soft Nerf-like ball.
Seriously, a Nerf ball causing blood spatter.
Ridiculous. Police dismissed that immediately. Then he just vaguely suggested maybe Dylan got injured some other way that night, just scrambling.
And Elaine confirmed Dylan was fine before the trip.
Absolutely.
Right.
Told police he was 100% fine, no injuries at all when he left Colorado Springs.
So the blood evidence is huge. The amount, the pattern, Mark's lies about it. It points to violence in that room.
Undeniably. It became clear to investigators that something violent happened to Dylan in that living room, and Mark was desperately trying to cover it up.
Meanwhile, the family isn't giving up searching.
No way. Elaine, Michael, Corey, they were relentless. Months passed. Then in April 2013, the snow started melting.
Making more areas accessible.
Exactly. Michael Hall, Dylan's stepdad, drove up to an area called Middle Mountain Road. It had been snowed in all winter.
And he saw something.
He ran into Mark's truck up there. Said Mark acted really suspiciously, drove off quickly, barely spoke. It just felt wrong to Michael.
So Michael got suspicious about that area.
Very. He actually went back and installed a trail camera on the road leading into Middle Mountain.
Smart move. Did it show anything?
It confirmed Mark was driving into that area multiple times. Michael took that straight to the police, told them, you need to search here.
A crucial tip from the family. Did police follow up?
They did. And 2 months later, June 2013, searchers found human remains on Middle Mountain Road.
Oh no.
They were identified as Dylan Redwine. The search was over, in the worst possible way. Became a death investigation.
What did they find initially?
At least 3 bone fragments, bits of clothing, t-shirt, headphone wire, drawstring from pants, a shoe, a sock.
And later?
Tragically, yes. On November 1st, 2015, Dylan's skull was found in the same general area.
The skull. Did the autopsy show how he died?
Yes. It confirmed severe blunt force trauma that was determined as the likely cause of death.
Consistent with the blood spatter in the living room.
Exactly. And nearby, they also found Dylan's phone, his iPod, his wallet, near a couple of fallen trees.
So all the pieces are pointing towards Mark. The canine, the blood, his behavior, the camera footage, the location of the remains.
It took time, years, for investigators to build the full case meticulously. But finally, on July 22, 2017, Mark Redwine was arrested up in Bellingham, Washington.
Charged with.
Second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death.
Did he maintain his innocence?
Initially, yes. But the source indicates that eventually he did admit guilt or confess key details about what actually happened that night.
Which leads us back to the biggest question. Why? What could possibly motivate a father to do this?
And this is where that horrifying discovery Dylan made back in 2011 comes crashing back into the narrative.
The photos on the laptop.
That discovery is identified as the core motivation. It all leads back to that.
How did it come up that night?
According to the material, on that night, November 18th, after Dylan finished chatting with his friend Michaela, he reportedly messaged Corey,
Asking
Corey to send him those disturbing photos of Mark.
Oh, wow. So he planned to confront him.
It seems so. The material states Dylan did confront Mark with the photos that night, questioned his character, criticized him for bad-mouthing Elaine and Corey.
And Mark?
Exposed. Shamed. Confronted by his own son with this deeply hidden, disturbing secret, he apparently became enraged.
The source says he admitted this.
It states Mark admitted his actions were driven by that shame and an uncontrolled anger after Dylan confronted him.
So in that moment of rage,
he lashed out, physically attacked Dylan, causing that fatal head injury confirmed by the autopsy. An act of uncontrolled fury fueled by exposure and shame.
The source also touches on the behaviors in the photos, gives them context.
Briefly, yeah. It mentions coprophagia, the eating of feces, describes it as a rare paraphilia, a psychological condition, sometimes linked to other issues, that can provide arousal for some.
And the cross-dressing.
Transvestic fetishism, defined as sexual arousal from cross-dressing. Again, described as a paraphilia or sexual preference.
And the source makes an important distinction here, right?
Crucially, yes. It points out these are considered treatable psychological conditions. They don't automatically mean someone is violent. The issue here wasn't the conditions themselves.
It was Mark's reaction to being exposed.
Exactly. His inability to handle the shame, the confrontation, his violent, uncontrolled rage in that moment. That was what led to the murder. Not the underlying behaviors, but the catastrophic reaction to their discovery.
So the case went to trial.
Yes. Based on all the evidence, forensic, circumstantial, behavioral, and eventually Mark's admissions, he was found guilty.
Guilty of second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death.
Correct. He was sentenced on October 8th, 2021.
To how long?
48 years in prison. He started serving that sentence at age 59.
Just devastating for the family, especially Elaine.
Immense heartbreak. The material mentions her powerful statement at the sentencing, talking about the devastation, her feeling that Mark showed no remorse.
And that awful thought she shared.
Yeah, imagining Dylan's very last moments, looking at his own father right before. It's just unimaginable pain.
So this deep dive really shows the tragic end to a long search, revealing this incredibly personal, disturbing motive.
And it highlights how the truth had to be pieced together so carefully.
Yeah.
It wasn't obvious at first.
Right, it took everything. The forensics, like the blood spatter showing violence in the house, the canine contradicting Mark's story.
The witness accounts of his weird behavior, Michael Hall's critical observation, and the camera footage linking Mark to the site.
The autopsy confirming how Dylan died, and finally understanding the why, that hidden secret, and the fatal confrontation.
It's a stark reminder of the damage secrets and crucially uncontrolled rage can inflict, especially within a family.
And it touches on complex human behaviors, these paraphilias, which the source notes are treatable, but here became tragically linked to violence through shame and anger.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? How hidden parts of someone's life, when suddenly exposed under pressure, can lead to such utterly catastrophic outcomes.
What does this case tell us about maybe the importance of addressing psychological issues or just fostering honest communication, especially in families, before things spiral so terribly out of control?
That's a heavy question to ponder, a really difficult but important takeaway from this incredibly sad story.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the material surrounding the Dylan Redwine case.